Top Fuel's fastest rocket down the quarter-mile strip at speeds exceeding 260 miles per hour in less than 6 seconds. It's the NHRA World Finals of drag racing.
Well, it sure seems ironic. The youngest racing the oldest one more time.
He calls me the wolf because he knows how hungry I am. He's been my hero forever, but I sure want this win.
Odds are sure getting in his favor.
That old man has beaten me 3 times this year. I got to get him at least once.
I got one thing on my side. The car has been running good.
I think the car is right, but geez, Garlett's car is always there.
Big Daddy, just hang in there. Don't make any mistakes, because the wolf is after you.
Easy now. Don't blow it. One mistake, and it'll be too late. He'll be gone.
Lord, make it a nice, safe run. Don't let anybody get hurt. Let the best car win.
We're at the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds for the NHRA World Finals of Drag Racing. Hello, I'm Paul Page, and here at Pomona, California, the fans chant the name of Big Daddy, Don Garlitz, and properly they should. He has been winning drag race events for over 22 years. Here at this meet, he qualified with a top speed greater than 268 miles an hour. But in the first round, he had his problems. He faced Dick LaHaye. Now, LaHaye came off the line faster, and then suddenly LaHaye's motor went away. Garlitz began the charge, and then his motor went away. The bottom end of it completely destroyed. So he has a rebuilding job set. Let's go back to his area right now and Steve Evans.
Paul, I'm in Don Garlett's pit area, and I can tell you that motor that was hurt in round number 1 is in the trailer now, and it's headed for nowhere but the recycler. Your next soda pop can may have a blend of Don Garlett's racing engine in it. Right now, Big Daddy and crew have successfully completed an engine swap, and his concern right now is not for that destroyed $7,000 block or $1,500 crankshaft. Right now, all he's thinking about is horsepower. Make all you can with this spare engine. And of course, his difficulties may cause a little shift in the momentum towards that young man who's been trying to beat his hero all year long.
And there is that young man, 24 years old, from Miami, Florida, Darrell Gwynn. He is setting up, ready to face the veteran Gene Snow in round 2 action. But back in round 1, he faced former NFL quarterback Dan Pastorini in his 4th pro start. So it was Gwynn and Pastorini on the line.
Well, looking at their qualifying times, Paul, Pastorini was throwing long on 3rd down here. He was the number 9 qualifier. Darrell Gwynn on the top of the heap, the number 1 qualifying position, the first time the young man had done that. But watch the starting line closely, and you'll see why Pastorini was such a great athlete in the NFL. His reaction times were sensational in round number 1. He surprised the young man with a hole shot. Pastorini had the early lead. Gwynn lost traction momentarily, but then outpowered him.
So Gwynn lit the tires on the start line, but still was able to power his way to a victory over Pastorini. And that set the stage for round 2, where this young man, Darrell Gwynn, will face longtime veteran Gene Snow.
And Gene Snow, Paul, has never run better. In fact, he comes fresh off a victory in Phoenix, Arizona, the last event on the NHRA National Tour. Gene Snow right now, Paul, truly enjoying drag racing, is a sportsman racer. A one-time pro. He's now involved in the oil business in Fort Worth, Texas. And I think going through Darrell Gwynn's mind right now, Snow is not going to make a mistake as Pastorini did. He's going to run a more competitive number. And if that young man smokes the tires again, ooh, he could be in real trouble.
Darrell Gwynn, of course, a 10-time winner in the sportsman division, now up in the top fuel ranks, making an impressive showing in this his rookie year, but looking for some victories now, a final handshake as Darrell Gwynn rolls up to the line. Gene Snow on the far side, already in position and looking up at the staging lights, ready to run.
This is a brand new car for Gene Snow, only has 1 race under its belt, and that was a victorious one I mentioned earlier in Phoenix, Arizona. So Snow goes to the line full of confidence.
The tires. He's got traction now, but too late as Gene Snow across the line. Snow with a 5:49, 260 miles an hour, moves ahead.
Well, Darrell Gwynn, Paul, lost 0.2 of a second when those tires lost traction, as we'll see right now. It was dead even off the mark, but watch the car in the near lane. When he smokes the tires, it's all over.
Same thing that happened against Pastorini, only this time it didn't work against snow. Let's go to the far end now. Steve Evans is with Darrell.
Well, Darrell, just when it looked like it might be your day, it all goes up in smoke.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to swallow, I'll tell you. I've never won one of these races in Top Fuel, but I figured we never qualified number one either, and we qualified number one here, and I figured, well, this is the one we're going to win. This is our last chance of the year. I can't bow my head to anybody. We've done very well this year. I got to give credit to everybody that's been a part of this car. We're going to sew up the season. We're hoping to stay in the top 5, depending on what Ormsby does. So, all in all, we had a good year.
Went out very early on, a real surprise here at Pomona. There is Frank Bradley, second round action as he comes up to face Bill Mullins.
Frank Bradley, Paul, of Napa, California, is such a steady competitor. Never very flashy, but always there. Qualifies on the first day, usually right in the middle of the pack. Now, this man, on the other hand, has been very flashy this year. I'm talking about fires. They have exploded about a dozen superchargers off the top of that motor. It did last long enough in Columbus, Ohio, though, this year to win the Spring Nationals.
And Bill Mullins got to this, the second round, as the result of a confrontation against this man, Joe Amato, who is the departing world champion in the first round.
And I wondered here, Paul, if Joe Amato didn't come in here taking Bill Mullins a little lightly. It was Amato off the mark first, thought he had it won. Suddenly, from behind, here came Bill Mullins to win it. A 5.66 to Amato's 5.68.
And that set the stage for this argument in the second round. Frank Bradley on the far side, Mullins on the near side. Bradley simply drives away from him. Bradley all the way with a 5.63, 249 miles an hour.
Frank Bradley was away first, Paul, and he never looked back. I have to wonder if Bill Mullins didn't use everything his engine had in that first round victory over Amato.
And that brings up the master. The Big Daddy, Don Garlits, is getting ready to face Gary Ormsby. We'll be back. We're back at the World Finals. This is Paul Page with Steve Evans, and a wave of electric excitement has just passed through the crowd because this man, the Big Daddy, Don Garlits, is coming to the line. He is the defending champion here. You saw him win on NBC Sports World. He won his first Nationals title back in 1963, and then in 1979, he stepped away from NHRA drag racing to build a museum to the sport and a beautiful home on the property adjacent as well. We had an opportunity to travel to Ocala, Florida to visit this most magnificent champion. When you go back to the beginning of the season, you're making a comeback. Did you really have that targeted? Did you think you could do it?
Well, I didn't think we could do it. That was my goal. I was asked that several times by the press, is what are your goals? And I said, well, we are going to pursue the World Championships. And then, of course, we built a brand new car. And on the third pass, we crashed there at Phoenix. And I thought everything was over. My entire career, when that thing was flipping upside down, I felt was over. And then my spirits were kind of down. But the crew was behind me, and they kept saying, Herb Parks, the crew chief, he says, we can still do it, Big Daddy. And little by little, we edged our way up there.
Don, you have everything that any man could want. You have this wonderful museum, a beautiful home, money, success, fame. Why are you still driving?
It is the fans, and like I said earlier, the comradeship of the competitors. There's just nowhere that I know that you can go and be with a group of people on a Sunday afternoon and enjoy yourself so much. And I still love to go fast. And this year, the 265 and the 266 mile-an-hour times are thrilling beyond explanation in words. So those are the three things: the fans, the competitors, and the speed is what keeps me doing it. And I'm going to do it as long as I'm able to see and my reflexes are correct so I can race properly and my body is physically well where I'm able to go down the quarter mile.
And of course, he comes to Pomona already wrapping up his second World Championship, and he's already up the speed. He now has a pass at 268 miles an hour, closing in on 270, Steve.
But he's got a very strong opponent this round. Gary Ormsby, Roseville, California, a car dealer, a professional racer. Ormsby has been in 2 final rounds here at Pomona and won the Winter Nationals 2 years ago. This car has been capable of winning all year long. Gary's driving has been a little erratic. He seems to have straightened out here at the World Finals.
We saw earlier that Garlits had to change the motor. Fresh engine in here, and that's got to be a question mark.
Well, Big Daddy came here trying to run 270 miles an hour, Paul. It put a lot of strain on his equipment, and right now he's not concerned with Ormsby. He's wondering how that motor is going to perform. They are staged and ready. Gary Ormsby in the far lane. Don Garlits in the near lane. It is Garlits away first, but Ormsby pulls alongside.
And Garlits suddenly something goes on the left bank of the motor. Gary Ormsby comes through with a victory, a big surprise here. 5:49, 259 miles an hour as Gary Ormsby moves ahead.
Well, you would have to say that Garlits was in the driver's seat here, Paul. You could see clearly there. He was away first. Ormsby dangling those front wheels off the pavement. But at the 3-quarter mark, that's where the tide turned on Big Daddy.
So the motor that was the question mark failed for Big Daddy as he came off the line very, very fast.
Don, I know how badly you wanted to end this tremendous season with yet another victory, but a lot of oil in the motor just not to be.
No, it was really going good, too, and it just went away. I guess it went lean, and it just burned up.
Well, your crew did a fabulous job of getting the engine replaced along with yourself, and seldom really can you come back from those engine explosions. It seems to get you behind and you never catch up again.
It's a tough deal sometimes. You know, you want to set it richer and where to be safe, but you just can't. We had the fastest guy in the round.
Have you ever enjoyed a season any more than you did this one?
No, this has really been a good one, Steve. Really been great.
It has been a terrific year. 6 victories. He's the oldest man now to wear the Top Fuel crown. That brings up Connie Coletta with 2 victories this season as he faces Gary Beck.
And earlier when Don was talking about the camaraderie of the sport, well, here's a guy he likes to hang around with, veteran Connie Coletta, Ypsilanti, Michigan. But this man, Gary Beck, hasn't had much to smile about, Paul. He's gone winless for 15 months after winning the world title for the 2nd time in '83, 3 events in '84, but so far this season, a blank.
18 career victories for Gary Beck on the far side. Coletta on the near side. A man that has had a good season to this point, looking for another win here today at Pomona.
But he's up against the quickest driver in the world, Paul, the only driver ever in the 5.30 elapsed time area. In fact, Gary Beck enjoys knocking down those elapsed time doors like Don Garlits enjoys the speed records. Beck the first into the 560s, 50s, 40s, and even the 30s, the only man to ever do it.
Coletta, a final adjustment on his gloves. Both cars roll up. Beck finally moves up the stage. Coletta is there. They roar off the line. Immediately, Coletta's tires go away as Beck roars through the lights at 5.73, 244 miles an hour.
Connie Coletta knew it was all over, Paul, just a few feet off the starting line. When those tires light up, as you put it, it's almost like your head hits the dashboard. The power just goes completely away. The acceleration is not there.
Another loss of traction in that right-hand lane, but it does not appear to be the fault of the lane. Each car that has come up and lost traction has done it at a different point. Let's go to the far end.
So Gary Beck is the next to advance to the semifinals in Top Fuel, a 5.73 put away Coletta, Gary.
Yeah, it's dropping cylinders a little bit. We need a little more poop, I think.
Shut it off earlier, or was that all it had run?
No, that was it. It was, I felt it dropping a little bit in low gear. What happened to him?
He smoked the tires and just threw in the towel.
That's good. I needed that one.
No time for laughter back in the Gary Ormsby pits, though. They're already hot and working on their machine as they're ready to face Frank Bradley in the semifinal rounds. And Gary Beck will face Gene Snow. We'll be back. In Pomona, and look at this. Just moments ago, Big Daddy made his trip down the return road, and they love him win or lose. But there are people still in this event, and a lot of action going on back in Gary Beck's pit.
You're looking at Gary Beck's crewman Terry Caldwell installing the transmission in this Top Fuel dragster. We've said before that the driver makes 1 gear change. Well, this is how it is done. It's an aluminum case, and much like a Model T Ford, believe it or not, has planetary gears in it, far more stronger than the old Model T, along with a clutch pack. And the clutch pack enables the drivers to change the ratio of the transmission. 30% underdrive, 35, clear up to 60% underdrive if you'd use one in a pro stock car. Now, all he does is push a button because there are air bottles that force the transmission to shift. ship and bolted to the back of the transmission. The long lever you see is the reverser.
Incredible technology in modern drag racing. Now to the first pairing of the semifinal round. There is Gary Ormsby, and on the near side, he will face Frank Bradley.
There is no finer car in Top Fuel racing, Paul, than Gary Ormsby. All the little trick aerodynamics, the engine producing somewhere around 3,000 horsepower, car weighing in about 1,600 pounds. And as I said before, Ormsby loves this racetrack. It has brought him his only national event victory. Frank Bradley, he has also won here at Pomona.
Monster machines, these Top Fuel dragsters. As we look at Frank Bradley closest to us, Gary Ormsby on the far side. Both cars inch up the stage. Now Bradley in position, Ormsby set, ready to go. There go the lights and the tires in the right lane again as Bradley falls behind and Gary Ormsby screams down the quarter mile. Ormsby with a 5:56, 251-mile-an-hour pass.
It's still hard to say, Paul, whether it's the near lane or the fact that the competitors in this lane have been behind a bit and are trying to make a lapse time with clutch, blocking up the clutch before the track is ready to handle that power.
The near lane has been costly today. Let's go to the far end with Steve Evans.
Gary Ormsby goes into the final round. This Pomona racetrack, good for him over the years. It fell off a little bit to a 5:56, Gary.
Yeah, it laid down a little bit. Then I noticed it got a little bit of oil out of it. It didn't pull quite as hard on the top end that time.
You have to work on it between rounds.
Yeah, it looks like we'll have to do a little work.
The racetrack, is it holding up for you?
Yeah, it seemed to be. I didn't feel it get loose at all out there, and it pulled real good except for the top end.
Frank Bradley smoked the tires early on.
I thought something happened because I didn't see him out there at a ways, and I figured he either smoked the tires or shut it off.
Okay, Gary Ormsby, that's one half of the Top Fuel final. Let's go back to Paul on the starting line for the second half.
Two veterans ready to go. Gary back, engine fired as he brings it back, ready to move up stage for a burnout, but Gene Snow waiting just a bit before he gets his engine fired.
Paul, there could be a problem here. That Texas crew trying out. Now that the motor dies, they're having a problem starting that car. Now the starter could send Gary Beck by himself if they inconvenience him too long. Beck not rushing Snow, does an extra burnout over the starting line. Now Gene, total frustration, asking his guys what's going on. I'm not sure anybody knows what's going on.
Snow continues to look around, tries to find out what's happening with the power plant behind him. Gary Beck, the champion he is, brings it back nice and slow. He wants to give Snow every opportunity. Now they get down. They're working on the magneto down around the front of the engine, and it is a desperate situation here for Gene Snow.
My guess here, Paul, would be the magneto was installed improperly in the pit area. They call it 180 degrees out. In other words, it looks like it's improperly, but it's exactly 180 degrees off. In fact, that's what they're trying to do. But I don't think they're... No, Gary Beck is on the starting line, and what a break for him, Paul. He has that unpredictable near lane.
What he needs to do is run faster than a 5:56 so he gets his choice of lanes in the final round. He is off and rolling. Gary Beck with a 5:55. He's done it. He'll get his choice of lanes in the final round as Gene Snow unzips and walks away. Gary Beck will face Gary Ormsby in the final, and it could be the end of a long dry spell for Gary Beck.
A good chance that Beck will assign Ormsby to this near lane, Paul, but if he does, Ormsby need not be timid. He just saw Beck run down it at 5:55. Not a thing wrong with that lane.
We'll be back with we're back at the L.A. County Fairgrounds, right on the border between Pomona and Laverne, California. Now, let's go to the pits and Steve.
Well, Gene Snow, after all the smiles from the 5:49 in the second round, then you sat bolted into the cockpit, totally frustrated.
Well, we had the magneto in wrong, and no way it could ever start, and that certainly is frustrating. We hadn't even hurt the motor on the run before the 5:49.
Well, you're not the first crew to ever put it in 180 degrees out. That's happened to a lot of racers.
Yeah, it happens. We discussed it. I said, after we leaked the motor and it leaked good, I said, we got two choices. We can take it apart and be sure it's right, but also at the same time take a chance of doing something wrong when we put it back together. Or we can go ahead and run it and maybe have missed something. So we elected to take it apart, and gosh, it's just one of those things that happen.
Okay, Gene, thank you so much. And here, bolted into the car, is the man who benefited from all of Gene's problems. Paul?
Coming up now, the final round in Top Fuel. Gary Beck and Gary Ormsby. Beck with 18 career victories. Gary Ormsby has only won once in his career, but in the right place. He's won right here at Pomona. They come to the line now.
And, Paul, you couldn't ask for a more evenly matched Top Fuel final round. They go to the starting line 1/100th of a second apart, and indeed, Gary Beck has put Gary Ormsby in the near lane. And as Gary Ormsby performs that thundering burnout in the lengthening shadows here at Pomona, Paul, you can see the long nitro flames out of the exhaust.
Gary Ormsby has been faster in earlier rounds with a pass at 5:49. Beck's best pass was the one in the semifinals at 5:55. Beck ready to go. So is Ormsby, a veteran and a man with only one win here.
Ormsby has been racing every bit as long as Gary Beck, but the experience edge, Paul, still has to go to this man, Gary Beck. He's been in so many final rounds, and that's really where the pressure is.
15 months since a victory for Gary Beck. He certainly is hoping for one here today. The Iceman is on the line.
Absolutely, Paul. In fact, Gary Beck showed very little emotion as he suited up in the staging lights. On the other hand, Gary Ormsby, he was pacing around, chatting nervously. A totally different style for both of these men.
These final seconds of preparation, Steve Evans, almost as important as the run itself.
And I guarantee you, Paul, going through both of their minds right now, don't be late. Get a quick start, because this, well, could be a driver's race. The man off that mark first might win it all.
At first, there was a question about this near lane. That question has now been decided. Both lanes appear to be holding the traction and the horsepower very well. So we're looking forward to one very fast final round here in the NHRA World Finals.
And before it's over 10 gallons of $50 a gallon nitromethane will have flowed through these motors. A very expensive sport, but one that could pay off big for either Gary Ormsby or Gary Beck right now.
Gary Ormsby in the near lane. He sets ready. That is Gary Beck on the far side. They move up. The staging lights are lit. They're ready for one yellow and then a green as they both are prepared. There we go. Here's Gary Beck. Darcy, Gary Ormsby tries to play catch up. It's Gary Beck the whole way as the motor lets go on Gary Ormsby's car. Parts fly everywhere, but the race already over. Gary Beck has won the World Finals.
And I guarantee you, they picked up the Gary Ormsby explosion on the Richter scale at nearby Caltech. He exploded the supercharger right off the top of the motor. Gary Beck had the advantage right off the mark. A narrow one, but all he needed.
Both cars launched very, very hard. Front wheels off the ground on both, but Gary Beck was the leader right from the word go. On Ormsby's car in the near lane, you can see the start of that engine explosion as Beck leads him across the line. We'll take a look at it one more time. Again, the near lane, there is Ormsby's engine as it completely disintegrates. But Beck already across the line. A win with a 5:53, 247 miles an hour. Ormsby the loser, 5:55, 245. The dry spell is now over. Let's go to the far end. And Steve Evans with Gary Beck.
What an incredible final in Top Fuel. Unbelievable race. 5:53, you won it.
Thank you, Steve. Boy, I saw him over there in the middle of the racetrack. He was running real strong.
And at the finish line, you probably heard him.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't sure for a second, but it was a big flash and a big deal. I was, believe me, real happy, real pleased for Larry Minor. It's been a long, hard season over here. Tremendous gang of people, Bernie Federle, Ed McCullough, Bill Walter, that worked so hard. The people on my car and Larry's car and Ace's car. Tremendous season, really, to try to finish up with a win.
And what a way to win it. Just a wheel-to-wheel duel.
It was a good drag race. We knew it was going to be.
Well, they didn't skunk you this season, Mr. Beck.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's nice to be here.
Oh, boy, what a race. Paul Page?
Well, there's the smile that comes with a long-awaited victory. Gary Beck puts his name in the winner's column here at the NHRA World Finals. Congratulations to Gary Beck. This is Paul Page for Steve Evans. So long from the L.A. County Fairgrounds.
This is the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds, Pomona, California, where the NHRA has been running the Winter Nationals for 26 years. Hi, I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans, and earlier we had an incredible moment in first round qualifying for Top Fuel when two of the greatest names in the sport came together.
That's right, Brock. Shirley Muldowney back in NHRA major competition for the first time since her terrible crash in Montreal, Canada in the summer of 1984. A brand new pink car, and who should she face in round number one but Don Garlits, the defending world champion from Sefner, Florida. And these two, of course, have had an ongoing rivalry for many, many years.
Absolutely. Sort of a love-hate relationship, really, between these two. They've raced, butted heads, been rivals on and off the track. But, of course, Garlits, one of the most concerned of all when she was hurt. But now it's strictly competition as these two faced off in round one.
And no one arrived late to the fairgrounds this morning knowing that this confrontation would occur in round number one. Before they strapped into these cars, Brock talked to Don Garlits.
Does this add any extra pressure? I know you've had pressure on you all your life. Is there any kind of extra moment here that wouldn't otherwise come in a Winter Nationals first round?
Well, of course, you know, because she has run so good, and then, of course, prior to that, you know, in the press, she has stated that, you know, she's the only one that's any competition for me, and it's like I won the World Championships, like, because she wasn't out there, and, you know, and then she came in and has qualified under me. It's like she's backing up what she says. So if she knocks me out in this first round, it'll almost be like just granting her the World Championship for 1985. What can you say, right?
Well, I can say that you're not going to let that happen if humanly possible.
Well, if humanly possible, I'm hoping not to let any stones go unturned here on this thing. But as you know, as goes all the way of drag racing, anything can happen, and usually does.
Well, the best of luck, Don.
Thank you, Brock.
And now, let's go to my pal Steve Evans with the other half of this classic confrontation.
Well, Brock, as you know, this past week in Southern California, you couldn't pick up a newspaper or turn on the television set without seeing this very famous pink car. And Shirley Muldowney, from that very first run in qualifying, did not disappoint her many fans. 5:47, the ride of her life, the quickest she'd ever run. It was low ET at the time. Only Dick LaHaye ran just a little bit quicker. But Shirley, it almost seemed destined that you would race Big Daddy Don Garlits in round one.
That's ironic. It's two good cars right at the start, so I don't mind racing Big Daddy, and I don't think he minds racing me.
You wouldn't prefer another draw?
No, the way we look at it is we try to get rid of the good ones and then go on from there, but it's going to be an awfully good race.
You had a few engine problems in qualifying.
Well, it got out there and it kind of misbehaved coming into the lights. It ran out of gear, so we made a change, and we knew that it did hurt the elapsed time, and not that we're bragging, but it did. I'm not going to say it could have picked up a 10th, but it would have been better than a 47.
Go get him.
That's what we're here for. Thanks, Steve.
So this is the way it played out. Remember now, Shirley Muldowney, this is her first major national race since her bad crash almost 18 months ago, which was followed by an epic story of rehabilitation.
These are the hands of Garlits crew chief Herb Parks, adjusting the low-end idle circuit on the engine. It may be the first big race for Shirley's new car. It's the last event for this black car that carried Don Garlits to a world championship a year ago. It will reside in his museum in Florida following this event. The tension, Brock, just incredible as these two stage.
Absolutely. As we said earlier, no real love lost between them. There's green light. Garlits is off first.
Garlits was away first. Shirley Muldowney loses traction, half track, and suddenly the blower exploded. Don Garlits took the win lights at 5.59 seconds, 264 miles an hour. The lady smoked the tires but wasn't about to give up.
She sure wasn't. As you can see here, Garlits left just a wink earlier, but Muldowney stays in it all the way. Tires boiling all the way down to quarter mile. Garlits' reaction time was almost 0.04 of a second better than Shirley's, but she stayed with him almost all the way until the Pomona Fairgrounds rattled with an explosion from her blower. That, of course, took her out of competition, ended her opportunity for a comeback here at Pomona. Steve was with her at the end.
Well, the disappointment for Shirley Muldowney in failing to defeat Don Garlits is compounded by a very expensive engine explosion. First of all, I know your ears are ringing, but are you okay other than that?
Yeah, I'm okay. Just wonder where the blower went, that's all.
It's in a million pieces, unfortunately, all over the racetrack. It looked to be a good wheel-to-wheel race until the engine exploded.
Well, he was out on me. Not much. I didn't see any daylight, that's for sure. I used the lean-out button, and I thought that might pick it up, and he was out there.
Well, I have a feeling that this setback here will be overcome very quickly.
Oh, yeah, you learn by your mistakes, and we'll definitely learn why it happened and try not to have it happen again. But what can you do, Steve? That's welcome to drag racing.
We'll see you at Gainesville, I'm sure.
Sure will, thanks.
So the three-time world champion was out after a classic confrontation with a very determined Don Garlits.
Well, Don, a 5:59, it looked like you let it wire to wire.
I got off a little bit ahead of her, and I guess it just held on to it. We shook real bad.
And she had a violent blower explosion. You probably heard.
No, I didn't hear that. Where was it, down toward the end?
Yes, sir.
No, I didn't hear that.
The pressure of racing Shirley is off now. What do you think about the rest of this event?
Now we got to try to win this race. Do our best.
He's got a good shot at it.
Well, that confrontation was, I'm sure, all you expected and more. But we'll be seeing more with Shirley Muldowney later in the show. I'll tell you what, though, Steve, Top Fuel, far from over.
Oh, Brock, we knew that Top Fuel was going to be special at the Winter Nationals yesterday when Joe Amato set a new world speed record at 269 miles an hour, and we have seen more drivers in the 540 elapsed time area than we ever have at any drag race. Young Darrell Gwynn there with a 540, Gary Beckett a 41, Connie Coletta at a 43, and of course Joe Amato, former world champion and new speed record holder, also in the 40s. Top Fuel is really a war, with or without the lady.
Let's not forget Funny Car. Not only do we have the world champion Kenny Bernstein continuing to dominate, running like a freight train as consistently as ever, but now John Force, Tim Gross, and Dale Pulte also in the hunt.
And Bernstein seems more worried about John Force than any of those cars that you just mentioned, Brock. And in pro stock, how about Warren Johnson, huh? He eliminated Bob Glidden in round number 1, set low ET at 7.53 seconds. Last year, only Glidden could run in the 750s here at Pomona. 7 drivers in the first round in the 750s in pro stock.
So, round 2 of Top Fuel about to begin with the Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals here at Pomona, California.
And already strapped in, hoping to win his first big one today, is Darrell Gwynn.
This is Laverne, California, which actually borders the racetrack, which is in Pomona, about 30 miles to the east of downtown Los Angeles, and a site of drag racing for years and years, Steve.
And Brock, it's time for Top Fuel competition, round number 2 in the NHRA Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals. Darrell Gwynn, Miami, Florida, a former alcohol dragster world champion, still looking for his first win in Top Fuel. How tough is it converting from alcohol to nitro? Well, in his first season of racing, Brock, Gwynn drew an ulcer at 24.
Hard to believe for such a low-key guy, a guy that runs with his dad, Jerry, also a former drag racer, a family operation.
And they are up against here in round 2, Frank Bradley of Napa, California. A former touring pro, Frank has backed off on his schedule, plans only to run on the West Coast this season. Now, Darrell Gwynn, in round number 1 earlier today, served notice he could win the whole thing. He ran a 5.406, missing low ET by 6/1,000ths of a second. He now faces this man, who for obvious reasons is nicknamed the Beard, Frank Bradley of Napa, California. Darrell Gwynn, as we said, still looking for his first big win. Don Garlits has been his nemesis, has beaten the young man 3 times last season.
And yet they remain close. Gwynn sort of the protege, as it were, unofficially of Don Garlits, probably because he raced against his dad, Jerry, over the years, and now both from Florida, the 2 most prominent teams, the oldest and the youngest on the trail.
Here we get a good look at Frank Bradley's car, about 1,800 pounds. No one's sure how much horsepower. We guess around 3,000. They move up now for the very delicate staging process. Darrell Gwynn, a brand new car, yet to be painted, finished number 6 in the world last year.
And a very determined young man, a man who has listened, watched the old pros in this business, and has come on very quickly. In fact, he went to the finals at the U.S. Nationals before losing to Garlits.
Starterbuster count sends them on their way. It is Bradley off the mark first. Bradley with the lead at half track. Gwynn pulls even. It is Gwynn by about half a car length. And for the 3rd consecutive run, counting qualifying, he's in the 540s. A 549 and 258.
Beautiful, consistent drive. You can see him clapping his hands there as he rolls to a stop. Here we go again. Gwynn versus Bradley. Gwynn in the left-hand side of your screen. As you said earlier, Steve, it looks like Bradley had a little bit of an edge on the start, but it was all kinds of power by Darrell Gwynn at half-track that drove him onto that victory. Steve is with him.
Well, Darrell Gwynn out of the cockpit, another 540, this time a 49, Darrell.
Well, I think the string of 40s will win the race. It did shake a little bit on that pass, but I'd like to thank everybody that's involved with this hot rod. We just need to keep it consistent, and I think we'll be there.
Do you think you can get in the 530s, maybe become the world's quickest drag racer at 24 years of age?
Well, I got to thinking about that last round. That didn't even run through my mind when I rolled in this gate, but I'd like to win the race and run 530.
You might just do that.
So the young man rolls toward the semifinals here at Pomona with a very convincing victory. One of the most familiar cars in the business, a man who has been around almost as long as Big Daddy Don Garlits. That is Connie Coletta rolling into the water box.
And he will face the only man who has ever run in the 530s, and that, of course, is Gary Beck. The 2-time world champion. Beck will be in the near lane. And Beck also won the last race held here at Pomona, the World Finals last fall. And his opponent, Connie Coletta, coming off of his best season ever, 2 national event victories last year. Now, Gary Beck, the record holder at 5:39. In fact, he has run that elapsed time twice. He, in the first round, came up with a near record time of 5.41 when he defeated Dick LaHaye. LaHaye was the #1 qualifier. But watch the left-hand side of your screen. LaHaye is running an experimental clutch in that car, and this time it hooked up a bit too hard. Watch the car in the near lane. A moonshot for Dick LaHaye. Gary Beck takes advantage and advances into round 2.
And from Ypsilanti, Michigan, the veteran Connie Coletta now running a very prosperous charter flying service as he uses some of his spare time to run the big top fuel cars.
Gary Beck ran quicker in round number 1 than did Connie Coletta, so he has lane choice, has elected to take the near side. So far, there doesn't seem to be any imbalance between the lanes, but traditionally the racers favor the near lane here at the fairgrounds in Pomona. Coletta in the far lane, Beck in the near lane as they inch forward into the electronic staging beam. When those wheels move, the clocks will start. It is Coletta away first. Connie Coletta away. Gary Beck trying to catch him, but he will not do it. Tire smoke eliminates Beck, and Connie Coletta goes to the semifinal round with a 5:52, 253 miles an hour.
Well, here is an example of the enormous power that these automobiles generate. You can see Coletta off a little bit earlier. Beck just stands on the throttle, and the tires go up in smoke. He loses traction and drops out.
Well, when Gary Beck smoked the tires, there was no question who was going to win that one, a 5:52.
It dropped off a little bit. I wonder why. We'll figure it out, I guess.
You know, as cold as it is, and it's getting colder, I wonder how much that racetrack's going to take.
I don't know. Usually, if the racetrack ain't going to do it, Steve, it's going to spin the tire just like his did, okay? And this racetrack has been bad when it gets warm, all right? And it's always held it, so I don't know. What kind of speed we run, do you know?
I didn't hear the speed, Connie, but good job into the semifinals.
Okay. Thank you.
So the veteran Connie Coletta joins the youngster Darrell Gwynn in the semifinals here at Pomona as this man, Big Daddy Don Garlits, will try also to make that select ranking of 4 at the Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals.
There could be an upset brewing here in round 2 of the NHRA Winter Nationals. That's Gene Snow, the long black car from Fort Worth, Texas. Opposite him will be an even longer, even blacker car of world champion Big Daddy Don Garlits. One of these drivers will go to the semifinal round.
Well, Steve, Garlits was 7/100ths of a second slower ET-wise in the first round, so Snow very much a contender here, and if he does it again, it's bye-bye Big Daddy.
Well, 7/100ths of a second in this sport is a clear-cut victory. And Big Daddy Don Garlits, for the first time, has an onboard computer. Big Daddy with a computer, that could be big trouble for the competition.
And rumored to be building a Streamliner car in his Ocala, Florida shops. Gene Snow, on the other hand, very much a gentleman racer these days. Used to be a pro, started the funny cars, they say, but now just races for the fun of it.
Well, Gene had his first NHRA National Event victory in Top Fuel last season, winning the Fall Nationals at Phoenix. Garlits in the far lane. Snow is the first to come up in pre-stage. The starter, of course, is Buster Couch, as he has been here at Pomona for 26 seasons.
Okay, the 3 goes green, and Snow, little wheel stand, he gets out of the throttle just like Gary Beck, and Big Daddy goes on to an easy victory. 5:58, though, not too quick in the ET department, Steve.
No, he's going to have to pick that up. A speed of 257 miles an hour. And you're right, Brock. Gene Snow's run looked exactly like Gary Beck's. It carried the front end out. When it settled down, it unloaded the rear tires, and that was it.
Okay, as Big Daddy rolls to a stop up at the other end of the racetrack, that is the former world champion Joe Amato, who in qualifying ran 269 miles an hour. Surely the quickest ever run in a single pass, almost a record. We'll see if he can back that up as he goes up against Earl Whiting from up in the Pacific Northwest. A not too constant competitor here in the NHRA National Championship Trail. Certainly not a man carrying the credentials that Joe Amato does. So Joe hoping to have a relatively easy run against the underdog Whiting. But in the meantime, Big Daddy is out of his car.
Well, for Don Garlits, it's a semifinal round berth with a 5:58 at 257 miles an hour. But Big Daddy, sooner or later, as we march through this wheel, we're going to run into one of those 540 cars.
Maybe.
You may be one of them before it's over.
Right. Any one of these cars can run that good.
Are you approaching this rather conservatively, just kind of building?
Just taking it a run at a time.
I know.
Not one of my better days, but the car's still in the race.
First time you've run a computer. Anything from it yet?
No, we're not gaining anything. But just getting information is all we're getting to find out where we've been.
And then maybe know where you're going.
I hope so, yeah.
Don Garlett's much more serious than normal. We wonder what he's actually got on his mind as we watch Earl Whiting backing up here. This is, as far as we know, only the second time he has ever raced in competition. Longtime car owner, very new driver.
Well, here's a man who's been drag racing all of his adult life, Joe Amato, the defending Winter Nationals champion. And this was that final race a year ago. Amato on the left-hand side of your screen up against Gary Ormsby, himself a former Winter Nationals champion. It was Ormsby off the mark. First, the nitro flames out of the exhaust pipe, but it was a clear-cut victory for Joe Amato. He hopes to do that very same thing to Earl Whiting right now, but Whiting may have some problems, some concern with the crew there, Brock.
Right, Steve. It looks as if one of the crewmen is saying, shut it off, Earl. We got some problems. Yes, no question about it. Earl Whiting is going to hit the kill switch, and that means Joe Amato gets a bye run here. Now, he'll still try to go quickly because he wants lane choice in that semifinal round, Steve.
And also, he'll want to test his right-hand lane. We saw Gary back, and also Gene Snow have problems in the near lane. Let's see how Joe Amato can handle it as Earl Whiting goes back to the barn.
In a very, very frustrating moment for a drag racer. They build so much adrenaline, so much emotion into these 5 or 6 seconds. And there goes Joe Amato on a bye run.
And it is a beauty, Brock. Amato at 5:46. Jerry Amato very happy with that top of the board, but Amato is not slowing down properly. The parachute is tangled. Joe Amato heading out through the parking lot.
Absolutely a big open parking lot here at the LA County Fairgrounds. Fortunately, a lot of room to shut it down. A 261-mile-an-hour top speed. So that 5:46 gives Joe Amato the lane choice over Connie Coletta in the Top Fuel semifinals.
And the other half of the semifinals, there's 30 years difference in their age. 24-year-old Darrell Gwynn, 54-year-old Don Garlitz, both from the state of Florida. And in the Darrell Gwynn pit area, his father Jerry putting the finishing touches on that engine, adjusting the valve on the aluminum Hemi racing engine to get ready for the 4th confrontation in the young man's career against Big Daddy.
Big Daddy Don Garlitz in one of those traditional between-race thrashes to get ready for the semifinals here at the Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals. I'm Brock Gates along with Steve Evans as Garlitz and his crew put their finishing touches on their 3,000 horsepower top fuel motor. That is Connie Coletta's crew. They too working to get ready for the semifinals. Hard work between these rounds. And now let's go to Steve with another competitor in the semis.
Well, Joe Amato, this is a top fuel dragster, not an off-road car.
Steve, it was a wild ride. It's a brand new parachute. I guess we're just putting a little bit of taxing because of the speed we're doing, and it tore a shroud light on it. You know, it was bouncing down there too. They're pretty good, but we got it stopped.
Well, you knew if you put it in the net, you were done for the day.
Yeah, I know. That's why we didn't want to hit that net, and whatever it took, I was going to drive it back the return road if I had it to get it stopped here.
Well, you know, you played beat the clock successfully. A 5:46 will give you lane choice over Connie Coletta.
Well, that was good. We were just trying to sneak up on a little bit at a time here. Tim Richards and the boys are doing a good job. The car went 5:47 3 times in a 5:46. You know, we're in the right bracket if we can keep it there.
Well, the most important thing he had that time were some good brakes.
Yeah, the Hurst Earhart brakes definitely do the job.
Well, he had a couple of hairy moments at the end of the track, but a happy ending as Joe heads back toward the pits. And now it's funny car time as we watch John Martin head into the bleach box. And Steve, he has a dubious honor facing him.
Oh, for sure, Brock. John Martin has his toughest challenge in his brief funny car history coming up. The world champion, Kenny Bernstein, will be in the near lane. Martin, only his second season as a driver. He was a car owner originally, and here is the body being latched down on Kenny Bernstein's car, the most aerodynamic funny car, certainly in all of drag racing, as we've talked about before.
And also probably the most high-tech, Steve, with all kinds of computerization, wind tunnel testing done a long time, and certainly the most consistent performing car perhaps in the history of modern funny car competition.
Well, they say there's no such thing as an easy one in drag racing, and that's probably true. But this comes about as close as Kenny Bernstein could ask for. In round number 1, Bernstein ran 0.28 of a second quicker than did John Martin. And in this quarter-mile sport, that's an eternity, both with the escape hatches open to let a little fresh air in.
Well, John Martin is just going to have to hope for mechanical problems. There doesn't seem to be any question that his car or his experience is able to run against his competitor from right down the road, really, in Upland, California. John Martin, as we said, not too experienced against a man who is the reigning world champion from Newport Beach, California, a former Texan who moved out here to stay even closer to the high-tech world of drag racing.
Kenny Bernstein was the first to win tunnel test his funny cars, the first to perfect onboard computer science, the first to hide some of his speed secrets under a dirty towel, and for 86, the latest trick from crew chief Dale Armstrong, 3 magnetos. Count them, 1, 2, 3. 3 magnetos means 3 spark plugs per cylinder, right? Correct. 2 of them in the conventional location developed by Chrysler Corporation many years ago for racing purposes. The third one, a little harder to see. It's down under the exhaust header. Let me show you in detail how that works. Now, this concept is only possible using a solid aluminum billet cylinder head like this one designed by Ken Vinnie. And here you see the usual spark plugs, 2 per cylinder. Now, the third spark plug, right here, just underneath the exhaust port, okay? And here's what the combustion chamber looks like with the 3 spark plugs. Here's the 2 you're accustomed to seeing. Now, here's the third one that has been bored in by Dale Armstrong. Now, you've got a much better flame front throughout the hemispherical combustion chamber. Now, with 1 spark plug, you have to run about 70 degrees lead. In other words, the spark plug has to fire 70 degrees before top dead center of the piston. With 2, you can back that down to about 55. Armstrong tells me with 3 of them, they only run about 40 degrees lead in the motor. The only problem they had in testing, the engine is now so thirsty for fuel that they almost ran the tank dry.
And that is the man who is responsible, and for the most part, for the technology in this race car. That is crew chief Dale Armstrong guiding Kenny Bernstein up into the staging lane. Not only has he built enormous technology into this race car, but the reliability level is awesome. The car simply doesn't break, Steve.
Well, don't you know John Martin in the far lane wishes he had a Dale Armstrong working for him. They line into the lights and they're away. Kenny Bernstein out first. John Martin says, you can have it, pal. Kenny Bernstein, low elapsed time of the event for funny cars. 5.60, 252 miles an hour. No taking it easy on Bernstein's part.
Well, Steve, remember that that's only 2/100ths of a second slower than Big Daddy Don Garlick's win in Top Fuel. So he'd be right in the hunt there as well.
Absolutely. What a match race that'd be. I'd buy a ticket to that. All right, here we have got the defending car owner with a new driver. Joe Paisano's car, Mike Dunn, who we've seen many times before, formerly with Roland Leon's Hawaiian car, is at the wheel. His first national event for Joe Paisano.
Paisano, the manufacturer of the JP1 racing engine. Also, this car carried Al Segrini to a Winter Nationals victory here 1 year ago.
And in the near lane, John Brute Force, still looking for that first big one after so many runner-up finishes. Now, John had an easy time of it in round 1 with a fellow named Ray Higley. Now, had he raced his scheduled opponent, Ron Carini, things might have been a little different. Carini failed his show for the reasons we're about to show you. On that qualifying run, it was Carini in the Captain Crazy Thunderbird far lane, Dave Uehara near lane. Carini qualifies, but suddenly in his lane, he has company. He is blindsided by Davey Uehara. No way Carini could see him coming. Right now has to wonder what on earth has happened to me. Here, you see it again. The Thunderbird of the far lane. Right now, Carini knows he had a good run, and suddenly he feels a tremendous impact from behind. It tears the rear wheels off of Carini's car. Davey Uehara's fuel tank explodes. Miraculously, both drivers were okay.
Well, it sort of looked like your basic freeway rear-under, except that it happened at 250 miles an hour as both cars slid to a halt, carrying thoroughly shaken race drivers.
Well, Ron Carini is out of the medical tent, and Ron, you appear to be okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. Well, I just don't know what hit me. I couldn't believe that, we just finished this car, and all of a sudden I get something wrapped in the back, and the thing just took off. I didn't, had no control of it.
Well, as fine a race car driver as Dave Uehara is, I have a feeling that whatever happened to his car, he probably had no control over it.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't his fault. He said he thought he hit a light down and it just threw him over the other way.
In fact, Dave Uehara, Dave, I know that when you got out of your car, you were more concerned about Ron's condition than your own.
I felt fine. I was just concerned about Ron.
Do you know what happened?
The car started drifting. Right coming into the first light, I hit the parachutes, and apparently I hit the first light, and that's what sucked me right over the other lane.
So the throttle didn't stick or anything like that?
I believe it was stuck a little bit because I was trying to get off the thing, and it just kept on going. That's when I went for the parachutes, and it hit the first light, and I think that's what sucked it right over there.
Well, race cars can be rebuilt. The important thing is that you guys are okay.
I was concerned about here.
So a tough break in particular for Ron Carini, who is out of the competition. But in this particular case, it leads to this confrontation confrontation between Mike Dunn and John Force.
Well, Mike Dunn has had 2 bad crashes in his career. Took about a year off and returns at the wheel of Joe Paisano's beautiful car in the far lane. Near lane is John Force with one of the most talented crew chiefs in drag racing, Austin Coyle. Just a matter of time, the experts say, Brock, before John Force wins the big one. He also from Southern California, an intense competitor who has a battle with that Christmas tree every time in that starting line. Force is dedicated to getting away first.
But not this time. It's Dunn out by 6/100. But it's the big power of John Force that drives him on to victory with a 575, 252 miles an hour. Steve is with Kenny Bernstein at the far end.
Well, we've used that word consistency so much last year, but I guess it still applies, Kenny. Another 5.60.
Well, that's good. Super. Well, they made it through the quarter mile that time without annihilating a piston. Maybe we can work on it some now and go from there.
I know you and Dale were concerned with that number 4 cylinder, and no smoke out of it this time at all.
No, well, he's been catching up with it every run, and it just seems like it wants a lot of fuel. But, you know, Dale is good at that, and the computer readouts help him to make those decisions, and he finally caught up with us. So it's good, encouraging knowing that we can go from one end to the other.
Is it as exciting beginning a new season wearing the number 1 as it was trying to get it last year?
Oh, yeah, it certainly is. I mean, the number 1 means a whole lot to you, needless to say. And but it's a whole new year, and you got a whole new battle to fight. Another 14 NHRA Winston races to go for, so it's a brand new season, and it's all over, starting again.
Well, 2 more win lights, and this one is yours.
We'd love it.
Well, you've got to label him the favorite, the most consistent funny car driver of them all at this particular point. As we go to the pit area of Darrell Gwynn, the young man from Florida, intent, concerned. He'll face Big Daddy Don Garlits. This is the pit area here at Pomona, California, the Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals, as we watch one of Joe Amato's crewmen assembling his engine, putting the headers on that cylinder head. This is Kenny Bernstein's Tempo Funny car as one of the crewmen adjusts the magnetos. Don't forget, in both the funny cars and the top fuels, they get a complete teardown between rounds. And now, let's go to Steve with John Force.
Well, John, Mike Dunn was right on those lights. It looked like he had to pick him up half-track.
He was hot. We were running just a shade ahead of Dunn, and I kind of tried to, I seen Bernstein spin the tire out there and still run at 60, and I thought, Coyle's got the horsepower in this thing. I can drive it off. And old Dunn, he just kind of stung me there a little bit, and she went out, had the front end up, and I saw the center line. I thought I was going to ram him. I pedaled her a little, and she sat down, and she cleaned up, and horsepower saved me there, buddy.
575.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Can you run quicker to challenge Bernstein if you have to?
No doubt about it. We're just trying to get a couple of laps in here to get this thing where it'll ET, and she'll run 60s. We know that, but when Bernstein spun him, there was no way I was going to put her to the wood here and blaze the tires and get beat up when this round was over. No way.
You heard it from John himself. No doubt about it.
A lot of strategy. You heard John Force talk about watching Bernstein and then adjusting his driving accordingly. That is Johnny West in the famed Hawaiian car, Roland Leong, getting ready to go up against Dale Pulley. And Pulley, Steve, has been running very strongly of late. In